In the quiet morning hours of April 12th, 2018, a chilling broadcast unfolded live on Facebook. Rannita Williams, a 27-year-old mother of three from Shreveport, Louisiana, appeared on the screen, visibly distressed. Behind her stood her ex-boyfriend, Johnathan Robinson, armed and agitated. As viewers watched in horror, the confrontation escalated, culminating in a tragic act of violence that left a community shattered and raised pressing questions about the intersection of domestic abuse and social media. Before we delve into the harrowing details of this case, we invite you to join our community by subscribing to True Crime Watch HD. Your support enables us to continue bringing you in-depth investigations into cases like this one. Rannita Williams was known among her friends and family as a vibrant and caring individual. Her life, though filled with the joys of motherhood, was not without its challenges. One significant challenge was her tumultuous relationship with Johnathan Robinson, a man with a history of violence and criminal behavior. Robinson, 36 at the time, had an extensive criminal record, including charges of attempted second-degree murder and domestic abuse battery. Despite his past, he and Rannita had been involved in an on-again, off-again relationship for several years. Their connection was marred by jealousy and control, elements that would eventually lead to a catastrophic confrontation. In the weeks leading up to the incident, tensions between Rannita and Robinson escalated. The exact nature of their disputes remains partially obscured, but it's evident that Robinson's jealousy and desire for control played a significant role. Rannita, seeking to assert her independence, began distancing herself from him, a move that only intensified Robinson's obsession. On that fateful April morning, Robinson arrived at Rannita's residence on Natalie Street. What transpired next was a horrifying sequence of events that Rannita, in a desperate plea for help, or perhaps to leave a record of her ordeal, chose to broadcast live on Facebook. As the live stream began, Rannita can be seen sitting in a chair, her demeanor a mix of fear and resignation. Robinson paces behind her, a firearm visible in his hand. He berates her, demanding an apology for unspecified grievances, possibly related to interactions on social media or perceived slights. The exact trigger remains unclear, but Robinson's volatile temperament in history suggests a deep-seated need for dominance and control.
I don't give a fuck about no f***ing police, you heard? Mm-hmm. Bitch, playing with me. Bitch, will pull up right now. Pull up.
Okay.
Pull up. Pull up.
No, it was just, I apologize.
What's up?
Because I couldn't go live on my phone. My page is blocked.
Bitch wanna be famous, I'm gonna make her famous.
No.
Wanna be famous, I'm gonna make you famous.
No.
No. Everybody wanna be famous, let's be famous today.
Okay.
Huh? I do.
Yes.
He's telling you I get on these bitches level.
No.
Go.
Stop, Johnathan.
Throughout the video, Rannita attempts to placate Robinson, offering apologies in a calm and subdued voice. Her composure in the face of imminent danger is both heartbreaking and indicative of someone accustomed to managing volatile situations. Robinson, however, remains unsatisfied. His agitation grows and his threats become more explicit. As the situation escalates, viewers of the live stream begin to realize the gravity of what they're witnessing. Comments pour in, some urging Rannita to escape, others expressing disbelief. Unbeknownst to the audience, a concerned family member had already contacted law enforcement, but time was running out. In a chilling climax, Robinson's rage reaches its peak. Ignoring Rannita's pleas and the potential consequences, he fires multiple shots, fatally wounding her. The screen goes dark, but the echoes of the gunshots linger, marking the tragic end of a young mother's life. The immediate aftermath saw Robinson engaging in a standoff with police, during which he fired at officers, injuring one. After approximately 80 minutes, he was taken into custody, facing multiple charges, including second-degree murder and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. This devastating incident not only highlights the lethal consequences of domestic violence, but also raises critical questions about the role of social media in such personal and violent events. As we continue to explore this case, we'll delve deeper into Robinson's background, the dynamics of his relationship with Rannita, and the broader implications for society. The murder of Rannita Williams was not an isolated act of violence. It was the culmination of years of unchecked aggression, domestic abuse, and a cycle of crime that had shadowed Johnathan Robinson for nearly 2 decades. His past was littered with red flags, a warning that went unheeded until it was too late. To understand the tragedy that unfolded on April 12, 2018, we must first examine the man behind the crime and the systemic failures that allowed him to remain a free and dangerous man. Johnathan Robinson was no stranger to the criminal justice system. By the time he walked into Rannita Williams' home that fateful morning, he had already built a staggering record of violent offenses. His rap sheet stretched back to the late 1990s, including charges for attempted murder, domestic abuse, false imprisonment, aggravated assault, armed robbery, and numerous other violent crimes. Despite multiple arrests and convictions, Robinson seemed to slip through the cracks of the justice system time and time again. One of the most alarming incidents occurred in 2015, just 3 years before he would take Rannita's life. Robinson was arrested after an incident of extreme domestic violence, in which he rammed his then-girlfriend's car, forced her inside a house, and physically assaulted her. When police arrived, they found him using the woman as a human shield, warning them that he was armed and ready to shoot. Officers managed to subdue him using a taser, but instead of facing serious consequences, Robinson pleaded guilty to a lesser charge of misdemeanor domestic battery. The original false imprisonment and aggravated assault charges were dropped, and he was sentenced to just 1 year of probation. That probation did nothing to change his violent tendencies. 3 months later, he attacked the same woman again. She called the police, and Robinson was arrested once more. This time, his probation was revoked, but the penalty was laughable. He served only 60 days in jail before being released back into the world. It was clear that Robinson had no regard for the law, and the legal system had no real plan to stop him. By the time Robinson and Rannita began their on-again, off-again relationship, he had already established a pattern of controlling and abusive behavior with other women. What's even more chilling is that Rannita herself had reported an incident of domestic violence involving Robinson less than a year before her death. In August 2017, Rannita called the police after Robinson grabbed her by the throat while she was sitting in a car. By the time officers arrived, she had visible red marks on her neck, a clear sign of strangulation, one of the biggest indicators that a domestic violence situation may turn deadly. Yet when it came time to press charges, Rannita, like so many victims before her, chose not to pursue the case. The report was closed without an arrest. This pattern of abuse and dismissal is common in domestic violence cases. Many victims are hesitant to press charges out of fear, manipulation, or financial dependency. In some cases, they may believe their abuser will change, or that they can handle the situation on their own. Unfortunately, this often leads to tragic outcomes, as it did with Rannita. She had the chance to put him away, and she didn't take it, said one investigator after the case. But you can't blame her for that. You blame the system for letting him get away with it for so long. While Robinson was undeniably dangerous on his own, his rage toward Rannita was further fueled by a toxic love triangle that had been unfolding for years. During their relationship, Robinson had been involved with another woman, Sharika Taylor. It's unclear whether Rannita knew about Sharika at the beginning, but by the end, both women were aware of each other. Tensions between them played out on social media, with Sharika posting cryptic messages aimed at Rannita, accusing her of trying to steal Robinson away. In response, Rannita fought back with posts of her own, declaring that she was done with Robinson and moving on. She was in a new relationship, and she made it clear online that she was happy without him. But Robinson wasn't willing to let her go. His jealousy turned obsessive, and when he saw that Rannita was happy without him, his need for control became overpowering. He started calling, texting, and showing up at her house uninvited. Friends recalled seeing his car parked outside her home for hours at a time, a silent threat that he was always watching. Then on April 11, 2018, just 1 day before the murder, Sharika Taylor made a post on Facebook that would set everything in motion. "Stop trying to ruin someone else's happiness by dealing with a taken man, because you might just end up being miserable," she wrote. Rannita, who had been silent on social media for weeks, fired back, "Don't play with me. I promise you ain't gonna like the way I play back." It was a post made in frustration, a woman standing up for herself against an ex-boyfriend and his jealous girlfriend. But it was also the final spark that ignited Robinson's rage. April 12th, 2018, a plan for murder. Robinson had already been growing increasingly unhinged in the days leading up to the murder. But after seeing the social media post exchange between Rannita and Sharika, he snapped. That morning, he drove nearly 250 miles from Houston, Texas, to Shreveport, Louisiana, carrying with him a rifle and 40 rounds of ammunition. When he arrived at 1301 Natalie Street, he forced his way inside. Inside the house were Rannita, her mother Rannita Williams, and her brother. Robinson pointed a gun at all three of them, taking them hostage. At some point, Rannita saw a brief opportunity to escape. She ran out of the house to a neighbor's home, where she frantically dialed 911. But Robinson wasn't done yet. With Rannita still inside, he made his final demand. He wanted her to apologize, not just to him, not just in private, but to the entire world. Through sheer force and fear, he made her sit down in front of a phone and go live on Facebook. And what happened next would be watched by thousands of people in real time. The warning signs were all there. Robinson was a convicted felon with a history of domestic violence. He had previously strangled Rannita. He was obsessed with control and revenge, and he had already shown a willingness to use extreme violence. Yet he was free. He had slipped through the cracks, and because of that, a young mother of three lost her life in one of the most horrifying ways imaginable. And the worst part, the world would watch it happen live. At approximately 10:48 a.m., Rannita Williams initiated a Facebook Live session from her residence at 1301 Natalie Street. What began as a seemingly ordinary live stream quickly devolved into a nightmare, as viewers realized they were witnessing a hostage situation unfold in real time. In the video, Rannita is seated, her demeanor a mix of visible fear and forced composure. Behind her, Johnathan Robinson, her ex-boyfriend with a notorious history of violence, paces menacingly. His agitation is palpable, and he intermittently directs his rage toward Rannita, demanding she apologize for unspecified grievances. Robinson's voice dominates the recording. "Now apologize, bitch," he commands, his tone dripping with menace. Rannita, striving to placate him, addresses the camera. "Hey y'all, this is Nunu," she begins, using her nickname. "Yes, I was wrong. I didn't have any business going off like that." Her words suggest an attempt to defuse the situation, possibly referencing a prior dispute, perhaps involving social media interactions. Throughout her apology, Robinson's fury remains unabated. He continues to berate her, his threats escalating in intensity. As the tension mounts, Robinson's fixation shifts momentarily. "I don't give a fuck about police, you hear?" he declares, moving toward the door. "Pull up right now. Pull up. Want to be famous? I'll make you fucking famous." His erratic behavior underscores a volatile mix of bravado and paranoia. The live audience, initially unsure of the video's authenticity, begins to grasp the gravity of the situation. Comments flood in, ranging from disbelief to urgent pleas for someone to intervene. The climax of the broadcast is both swift and brutal. Robinson, consumed by rage, retrieves a rifle. The screen captures his shadow as he raises the weapon. Rannita's final heart-wrenching plea echoes, "Stop, Johnathan! Stop, Johnathan!" Her words are punctuated by the deafening sound of gunfire. Multiple shots ring out, and the phone's camera tumbles, capturing a distorted view of the ceiling before the feed abruptly ends. The live stream, lasting mere minutes, leaves an indelible mark on all who witnessed it. The Shreveport Police Department received the first reports of gunfire at 10:48 a.m., coinciding with the start of Rannita's livestream. Officers were dispatched to the scene, arriving within minutes. Upon arrival, they were met with a barrage of gunfire from Robinson, who had barricaded himself inside the residence. Corporal Robert Entrikin, one of the first responders, sustained a gunshot wound to his wrist during the initial exchange. Despite his injury, officers established a perimeter and initiated protocols for a hostage situation. Negotiators attempted to communicate with Robinson, urging him to surrender peacefully. Inside the house, the situation remained perilous. Rannita's condition was unknown to the officers outside, and Robinson's erratic behavior posed a continuous threat. The standoff extended for approximately 80 minutes, during which Robinson sporadically fired at law enforcement, further escalating the tension. Throughout this period, the community remained on edge. Neighbors were evacuated or advised to stay indoors, and local news outlets provided continuous coverage, capturing the collective anxiety that gripped Shreveport. At approximately 12:10 p.m., Robinson, perhaps realizing the futility of his situation, agreed to surrender. He exited the residence and was immediately taken into custody without further incident. With the assailant secured, officers entered the home, where they were confronted with a grim scene. Rannita Williams was found unresponsive, having sustained multiple gunshot wounds. Despite the rapid response and immediate medical attention, she was pronounced dead upon arrival at University Health Hospital. The brutality of the crime, coupled with its public broadcast, sent shockwaves through the community and beyond. In the hours following the incident, Robinson was processed and faced multiple charges, including second-degree murder, felon in possession of a firearm, and several counts of attempted first-degree murder related to his assault on law enforcement officers. His prior criminal history, marked by violent offenses, painted a portrait of a man long accustomed to flouting the law. The public nature of Rannita's death, streamed live for all to see, sparked a myriad of discussions about the role of social media in modern society. While platforms like Facebook offer avenues for connection and expression, this incident highlighted their potential misuse as tools for broadcasting violence and instilling fear. In the wake of the tragedy, community leaders and activists in Shreveport called for increased support for victims of domestic violence. The tragic murder of Rannita Williams, broadcast live on social media, not only shocked the Shreveport community, but also drew national attention to the harrowing consequences of domestic violence and the misuse of digital platforms. As the legal system moved to address this heinous crime, the ensuing proceedings offered a complex interplay of justice, remorse, and the enduring pain of those left behind. Following the brutal slaying of Rannita Williams on April 12, 2018, Johnathan Robinson was swiftly apprehended after an intense 80-minute standoff with law enforcement. During this confrontation, Robinson fired upon officers, injuring one, which compounded the severity of his offenses. Upon his arrest, Robinson faced multiple charges. Second-degree murder for the deliberate and fatal shooting of Rannita Williams. Attempted first-degree murder, 7 counts corresponding to the officers he targeted during the standoff. Felon in possession of a firearm. Given his extensive criminal history, Robinson was prohibited from firearm ownership. These charges underscored the gravity of Robinson's actions and set the stage for a legal battle that would test the resilience of Rannita's family and the community's faith in the justice system. In the months leading up to the trial, Robinson's behavior oscillated between apparent remorse and emotional volatility. During preliminary hearings, he was often seen shaking and sobbing, especially when confronted with the gruesome details of his crime. At one point, as a detective recounted the events leading to Rannita's death, Robinson became visibly distressed, attempting to overturn the defense table and collapsing in anguish. This display prompted heightened security measures in subsequent court appearances to prevent further disruptions. Despite his emotional outbursts, Robinson expressed a consistent desire to accept responsibility for his actions. He repeatedly sought to enter a guilty plea, aiming to expedite the legal process and spare Rannita's family further trauma. However, the prosecution's initial pursuit of the death penalty necessitated a more prolonged judicial procedure, as a defendant cannot plead guilty to a capital offense without due process. After extensive deliberations and consultations with Rannita's family, the Caddo Parish District Attorney's Office made a pivotal decision. On January 24, 2019, the prosecution agreed to withdraw the death penalty in exchange for Robinson's guilty plea to first-degree murder and multiple counts of attempted first-degree murder. This agreement ensured a swift resolution to the case and honored the family's wishes to avoid the protracted anguish of a capital trial. In a solemn courtroom session, Robinson formally admitted to the following: The murder of Rannita Williams, accepting a life sentence without the possibility of parole, probation, or suspension. 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder, pertaining to the officers directly endangered during the standoff, resulting in 2 consecutive 50-year sentences. 5 additional counts of attempted first-degree murder, related to other officers present, with these sentences running concurrently. Collectively, Robinson's sentences amounted to life imprisonment plus 100 years, effectively ensuring he would spend the remainder of his life incarcerated. One of the most poignant moments during the sentencing was the interaction between Robinson and Rannita Williams, Rannita's mother. After the formalities concluded, Robinson, shackled and flanked by bailiffs, requested permission to address Rannita directly. Fighting back tears, he expressed profound remorse. "I'm so sorry I did what I did. I know I hurt a lot of people myself. I hope one day you forgive me for what I did." Rannita, embodying grace amidst unimaginable pain, responded, "I forgave you already." This exchange, laden with raw emotion, highlighted the complex interplay of grief, anger, and the human capacity for forgiveness. Rannita later shared with reporters that she had received multiple apology letters from Robinson while he was incarcerated, and despite the enormity of his crime, she chose to forgive, stating, "I forgive him, but I never will forget." Her words underscore a profound truth. Forgiveness does not erase the past, but can serve as a step toward healing. The resolution of the legal proceedings provided a semblance of closure for Rannita's family and the broader Shreveport community. However, the case left an indelible mark, prompting introspection on several critical issues. Domestic violence awareness. Rannita's tragic end underscored the lethal potential of abusive relationships. Advocacy groups emphasize the importance of recognizing warning signs and providing resources for those in peril. Social media's double-edged sword. The use of Facebook Live to broadcast the crime ignited debates about the responsibilities of social media platforms in monitoring and responding to violent content. Judicial system scrutiny. Robinson's extensive criminal history raised questions about systemic failures that allowed a habitual offender to remain free, ultimately leading to a preventable tragedy. In the aftermath, local organizations intensified efforts to support domestic violence victims, and dialogues about policy reforms gained momentum, aiming to prevent similar incidents in the future. Domestic violence is one of the most common yet underreported crimes worldwide. Many people assume that abuse is limited to physical violence, but emotional, psychological, and technological abuse are just as harmful. Before her murder, Rannita Williams exhibited many signs of being trapped in a dangerous cycle of abuse, a pattern that is tragically familiar in domestic violence cases. Past physical violence. In August 2017, Rannita had reported that Robinson strangled her during an argument. Strangulation is one of the strongest indicators that an abuser may escalate to murder. Coercion and control. Robinson had a long history of controlling and intimidating women. He manipulated them into staying in toxic relationships through threats, emotional blackmail, and violence. Stalking and harassment. In the months leading up to her murder, Robinson was seen lurking outside Rannita's home, watching her movements and obsessing over her new relationship. Jealousy and possessiveness. His anger was triggered not just by losing control over Rannita, but by the fact that she had moved on. Many victims, like Rannita, feel trapped, either because of financial dependency, fear, or hope that the abuser will change. Unfortunately, statistics show that once a domestic violence victim decides to leave, that is the most dangerous time for them. Had law enforcement, friends, or even social services been able to intervene earlier, perhaps Rannita's fate could have been different. The role of social media, a tool for awareness or a weapon for violence. One of the most shocking elements of this case was how public the crime was. It happened not in secret, but on Facebook Live, where thousands of people watched in horror. This raises serious questions about the role of social media platforms in monitoring, preventing, and responding to acts of violence. Should social media companies do more? Platforms like Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram have content moderation policies, but the response time to crimes happening live is still alarmingly slow. Facebook Live has been used to broadcast murders, assaults, and even suicides before. Automatic content removal systems are still not fast enough to prevent tragedies from being shared. Live video can be an empowering tool, but it can also be used as a method of control, fear, and violence, as seen in this case. Some have called for stronger regulations, such as a delay on all live broadcasts so moderators can intervene before violent content spreads, better AI monitoring tools that detect distress signals or gunfire and flag them for immediate removal, stronger cooperation with law enforcement, allowing faster emergency response times. Rannita's case is a clear example of how social media can be both a platform for justice and a stage for violence. Law enforcement and the justice system, a cycle of missed opportunities. One of the most frustrating aspects of domestic violence cases is that so many warning signs are ignored. Could law enforcement have stopped Robinson before the murder? When reviewing Robinson's history, it becomes painfully clear that he should have never been free to commit this crime in the first place. He had an extensive record of violent offenses dating back to the 1990s, including attempted murder, robbery, and domestic abuse. He had physically assaulted previous girlfriends and was known to use weapons. He had threatened law enforcement before and was considered a repeat offender. Yet despite all this, he was still released after short prison sentences and allowed to possess a firearm illegally. The justice system often fails victims of domestic violence because of several key issues: short sentences and lenient plea deals. Robinson had been arrested for domestic abuse battery in 2015, but instead of receiving a long sentence, he was given probation. This allowed him to continue harming women. Victim reluctance to press charges. Many victims, including Rannita, feel pressured not to pursue legal action against their abusers. This is not their fault. It is a sign of how deeply abuse manipulates its victims. Failure to enforce protective orders. Even when restraining orders exist, they are often ignored by abusers. Without proper enforcement and protection for victims, these measures mean little. Many advocates argue that domestic violence laws should be stricter, with mandatory arrests for abusers, even if the victim doesn't press charges, longer prison sentences for repeat offenders, better protection programs for survivors, including relocation assistance. If these systems had been in place, Robinson might have been behind bars instead of walking free that April morning. What can be done to prevent another tragedy like this? The murder of Rannita Williams is heartbreaking, but it is not unique. Thousands of domestic violence victims are murdered every year, often by partners they tried to leave. However, change is possible. There are several key steps that can help protect victims. 1. Early intervention programs for domestic violence victims. Many victims don't know where to turn for help. More investment in domestic violence shelters, crisis hotlines, and survivor advocacy programs is crucial. 2. Tougher laws against repeat offenders. Robinson had a long history of violence, yet he kept getting released from jail. Laws should treat repeat domestic abusers with the same severity as other violent criminals. 3. Better social media monitoring for live crimes. If a delay feature had been in place on Facebook Live, perhaps law enforcement could have responded before Robinson pulled the trigger. 4. More education on warning signs of domestic abuse. Many people don't recognize abuse until it's too late. Schools, workplaces, and community groups should teach people how to spot warning signs and seek help. Rannita Williams should be remembered not just for the way she died, but for the life she lived. She was a loving mother, a talented designer, and a woman with dreams for the future. Her story is a painful reminder of the dangers of domestic violence, but it is also a call to action. No one deserves to live in fear. No one should have to fight for their safety alone, and no one should be silenced by violence. If there is one lesson to take from this tragedy, it is this: we must do better. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, please reach out to a local support organization. Help is available. You are not alone. What do you think? What are your thoughts on the case of Rannita Williams? Should domestic violence laws be stricter? Should social media companies take more responsibility for live crime broadcasts? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to True Crime Watch HD for more in-depth true crime investigations. Thank you for watching. Stay safe.